The morning sun cast long shadows across the farming colony of New Terra as Maya Chen skipped between the crop rows. The 8-year-old girl loved helping her father check the automated harvesters. Her dark hair bounced as she ran, and her laughter echoed across the fields where golden wheat swayed in the artificial breeze. "Papa, look, the corn is taller than me now," Maya called out, stretching her arms up toward the green stalks. Engineer David Chen smiled as he watched his daughter play. Life on New Terra was simple but good. The colony had been established only 5 years ago, but the 1,000 families who lived here had built something beautiful. They grew food, raised children, and lived in peace on this distant world at the edge of human space. "Maya, stay close," David called. "The inspection team will be here soon." The Galactic Dominion had sent word that their ships would arrive today, for what they called a compliance check. David did not like the sound of that, but Earth's government had told all colonies to cooperate with their new alien neighbors. The Dominion controlled most of the galaxy, and humanity was still new to interstellar politics. At exactly noon, 3 massive ships appeared in the sky above New Terra. They were dark and angular, casting shadows over the entire colony. The ships landed with a thunderous roar that shook the ground and sent the colonists running to their windows. From the largest ship, a group of tall, gray-skinned aliens emerged. They wore dark uniforms with silver markings and moved with the confidence of those who expected to be obeyed. Leading them was Admiral Zexathara, a being whose cold yellow eyes showed no emotion as he surveyed the human settlement. "Primitives," he muttered to his aide. "Look how they scatter like insects." Colony Administrator Elena Vasquez walked out to meet the aliens. She was a former military officer who had chosen the quiet life of managing a farming world, but her bearing still showed her training. She stood straight and kept her voice steady as she greeted the Dominion forces. "Welcome to New Terra, Admiral. I am Elena Vasquez, the colony administrator. How can we assist you today?" Admiral Zexathara barely looked at her. His translator device made his words sound mechanical and cold. "This world produces food. The Dominion requires tribute. You will provide 70% of your harvest immediately." Elena's jaw tightened. "Admiral, with respect, that amount would leave our people without enough food for the winter. We can offer 30%, as outlined in the initial contact agreements." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being questioned by what he considered lower life forms. The humans were new to the galaxy, barely worth noticing, yet this female dared to negotiate with him. "You misunderstand your position, human. The Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species. You will comply or face consequences." Around the landing area, colonists had begun to gather. They stayed at a distance, but their worried faces showed they understood something was wrong. David Chen had arrived with Maya still holding his hand, both curious about the alien visitors. Elena stood her ground. "Admiral, I cannot authorize the removal of resources that would starve our people. Perhaps we could arrange a different schedule or discuss alternative compensation." The Admiral's aide whispered something in their alien language. Zexathara nodded slowly, his expression growing darker. "You choose defiance," he said. "Very well. Perhaps an example is needed to teach your species about the consequences of disobedience." Before Elena could respond, the Admiral gestured to his soldiers. They raised weapons that hummed with energy. The colonists began to back away, but the soldiers moved to surround them. "Admiral, please," Elena said, raising her hands. "There's no need for violence. We can work this out." "The time for discussion has passed," Zexathara replied. His yellow eyes scanned the crowd of humans until they settled on Maya Chen. The small girl stood close to her father, her eyes wide with fear, but still curious about the strange visitors. "That one," the Admiral said, pointing directly at Maya. 2 soldiers moved forward. David Chen stepped in front of his daughter, his face pale but determined. "She's just a child. If you want to punish someone, take me instead." The Admiral smiled, showing sharp teeth. "The punishment is not for her, it is for all of you. You will remember this moment and understand the price of defying the Dominion." The soldiers pushed David aside with casual force. He hit the ground hard but immediately tried to get up. More soldiers held him down as Maya was brought forward. The little girl was crying now, calling for her father. "Papa, Papa, help me!" "Elena, stepped forward desperately. "Admiral, I beg you. Take our food, take whatever you want, but please don't hurt an innocent child." "Innocence is a luxury your species can no longer afford," Zexathara replied coldly. The Admiral drew his sidearm, a sleek weapon that glowed with deadly energy. Maya looked up at him with tears streaming down her face, not understanding why these strangers wanted to hurt her. "Please," she whispered. "I want to go home." Those were Maya Chen's last words. The energy blast was quick and clean. The 8-year-old girl fell to the ground and did not move. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the Dominion soldiers seemed surprised by their commander's action. David Chen's scream of anguish echoed across the colony. He broke free from the soldiers holding him and crawled to his daughter's body, gathering her in his arms. His sobs were raw and heartbreaking as he held the child who would never laugh or run through the wheat fields again. Elena Vasquez stared at the scene, her face showing no emotion. But inside, something fundamental had changed. She had seen war, had lost soldiers under her command, but this was different. This was the murder of an innocent child for no reason other than to make a point. Admiral Zexathara holstered his weapon and looked around at the shocked faces of the colonists. "Let this be a lesson," he announced. "The Dominion's patience has limits. You will provide the tribute demanded, or more will die." The aliens began to return to their ships, their business apparently finished. They took nothing with them except the memory of a child's death and the satisfaction of having delivered their message. As the ships lifted off and disappeared into the sky, the colonists slowly gathered around David Chen and his daughter. Some wept openly. Others stood in stunned silence. All of them had been changed by what they had witnessed. Elena knelt beside David and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. David looked up at her with eyes full of pain and rage. "They killed her for nothing," he said. "She was just a little girl who liked to help in the gardens. She never hurt anyone." "I know," Elena replied softly, "and they're going to pay for it." The colony's communication officer approached them carefully. "Administrator, we've received orders from Earth Command. They want a full report on the incident." Elena stood slowly, her expression hardening. "Send them everything. Video records, witness statements, all of it. Make sure they understand exactly what happened here today." As the day wore on, news of Maya Chen's death spread throughout the colony and then beyond. The story traveled from New Terra to the other human settlements, then to Earth itself. Within hours, every human in known space had heard about the 8-year-old girl who died because an alien admiral wanted to teach them a lesson about obedience. The reaction was not what the Galactic Dominion expected. Instead of fear and submission, the humans became quiet. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no demands for justice through diplomatic channels. The response was something far more dangerous: silence. Elena Vasquez stood in her office that night, looking out at the colony where lights burned in every window. The colonists were not sleeping. They were planning, discussing, and making decisions that would echo across the galaxy. She opened a secure communication channel to Earth and began typing her report. But this was not just an official document. This was a declaration of war, written in the simple words that described how a child died for an alien's amusement. Maya Chen was 8 years old, she wrote. She loved helping her father in the fields. She was curious about the universe and kind to everyone she met. Today, Admiral Zexathara of the Galactic Dominion executed her in cold blood to send a message about human obedience. Elena paused, thinking about the little girl who would never grow up, never see another sunrise, never laugh again. "Message received," she continued typing. "Here is our reply." Meanwhile, on his flagship returning to Dominion space, Admiral Zexathara reviewed the day's events with satisfaction. The humans had learned their place in the galactic order. The tribute would be delivered on schedule, and word of what happened on New Terra would spread to other human worlds. There would be no more defiance. His aide approached with a data pad. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from other human colonies. They're all agreeing to increase their tribute payments, without argument." "Excellent," Zexathara replied. "Fear is an effective teacher. The humans now understand the consequences of challenging Dominion authority. What the Admiral did not know was that the increased tribute offerings were not signs of submission. They were part of something much larger, a plan that was already beginning to take shape in human minds across the galaxy. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, General Sarah Kim received Elena's report. She read it twice, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression was cold and determined. "Activate Protocol Lazarus," she said to her aide. "Full implementation. All assets, all resources, everything we have." "General, are you certain?" Protocol Lazarus was designed as a last resort scenario. "They killed a child," General Kim replied simply. "They killed our child. That makes this exactly the scenario Lazarus was designed for." Across human space, dormant communication networks suddenly came alive. Hidden facilities began activating systems that had been built in secret over the past decade. Scientists, soldiers, and engineers who had been living normal lives received coded messages that changed everything. Dr. James Morrison, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying Dominion physiology and technology since first contact. Now his research took on a new purpose. He would find every weakness, every vulnerability, every way to hurt the beings who thought they could murder human children without consequences. Captain Elena Vasquez submitted her resignation as colony administrator that night. By morning, she had received new orders that would take her far from New Terra's peaceful farms. She had work to do, and it would not be the kind of work done in the light of day. Maya Chen was buried the next morning in a small grave overlooking the wheat fields she had loved. The entire colony attended the service. No words were spoken about revenge or justice. Those things were already in motion, set into action by forces the Galactic Dominion could not imagine. The little girl's gravestone bore a simple inscription: Maya Chen, beloved daughter. She believed the universe was good. But the universe had shown its true face, and humanity was about to respond, in kind. The war for Maya Chen's memory was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Zexathara had made his fatal mistake. He had shown humans that the universe contained beings who would kill children for political convenience. Now he would learn what happened when a species that loved its young was pushed beyond all limits of tolerance. The age of human innocence was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. 3 days after Maya Chen's death, the Galactic Council gathered on their capital world of Centralis Prime. The massive chamber buzzed with the conversations of dozens of alien species, each representing their portion of the vast dominion. At the center of it all sat High Chancellor Vorthak, an ancient being whose species had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. "The human situation requires discussion," announced Chancellor Vorthak, his voice carrying easily through the chambers. Translation systems. "Admiral Zexathara has reported successful compliance enforcement on their outer colonies." Representative Clixtall of the Mining Guild shifted in his seat. His species had been among the first to encounter humans during expansion, and they had found them surprisingly adaptable. "Chancellor, the humans have been unusually quiet since the incident on New Terra. Perhaps we should consider their response." "What response?" Admiral Zexathara stood from his position in the military section. "The humans have increased tribute from all their worlds. They understand their position now. The execution of one child has brought their entire species into line." Several council members nodded approvingly. This was how the galaxy worked. When primitive species joined the Dominion, they often required dramatic lessons to understand their place. The humans were no different from dozens of other races that had been brought to heel over the centuries. But Representative Yilnara from the Intelligence Division looked troubled. Her people specialized in monitoring communication patterns across the galaxy, and what they had detected from human space was unusual. "Chancellor, if I may," she began carefully. "Our monitoring stations have detected strange patterns in human communications since the New Terra incident. Their normal data traffic has decreased by 90%, but we're detecting encrypted signals on frequencies they've never used before." Admiral Zexathara waved dismissively. "Primitive species often change their communication habits when frightened. It means nothing, perhaps Leonardo replied. But we've also detected unusual energy signatures from their home system. Deep scans suggest significant industrial activity, but our requests for inspection have been politely declined. Chancellor Vorthak considered this information. In his 1,000 years of experience, most species became either openly rebellious or completely submissive after a demonstration of dominion power. The humans' quiet acceptance combined with secretive behavior was unusual, but not necessarily threatening. Continue monitoring, he decided. But there is no cause for concern. The humans are a young species with primitive technology. Even if they are planning something, they lack the capability to challenge Dominion authority. What the Galactic Council did not know was that human civilization had been preparing for this moment since their first contact with alien life. The governments of Earth had studied every piece of information about the Dominion, and they had not liked what they learned. Dr. James Morrison sat in his laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by holographic displays showing Dominion, biology and technology. For 3 years he had been studying samples obtained through trade and diplomatic exchanges. Now his research had a new focus. Computer, display Dominion neural structure analysis, he commanded. The hologram shifted to show the brain patterns of various Dominion species. James had been looking for weaknesses, ways to understand their psychology and predict their behavior. What he had found was both surprising and useful. Fascinating, he murmured as he studied the data. Their neural pathways show no development for rapid tactical thinking. 1,000 years of peace have made them incapable of true strategic warfare. His assistant, Dr. Sarah Park, looked up from her own workstation. James, look at this. I've been analyzing their military equipment from the inspection recordings. Their weapons are designed for intimidation, not efficiency. The power settings, used to kill Maya, were actually overkill by a factor of 10. James nodded grimly. They're used to dealing with species that surrender at the first show of force. They have no concept of what to do with an enemy that fights back with intelligence and determination. On the other side of Earth, in a facility hidden beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Kim was reviewing humanity's most classified military assets. Protocol Lazarus had been developed in absolute secrecy, a contingency plan for the day when humanity might face an existential threat. Status report, she commanded as she entered the main operations center. Colonel Mitchell, her chief of staff, stepped forward with a data tablet. General, all Lazarus assets are now active. We have confirmation from 37 hidden facilities across human space. The shipyards are operational, the research teams are deployed, and our intelligence networks are gathering data. Good. What about our new recruits? Captain Vasquez has been briefed and accepted command of the new Special Operations Division. She's requested complete autonomy in selecting her team and planning operations. General Kim nodded. Elena Vasquez had been her first choice to lead the human response. The woman had witnessed Maya's death firsthand and understood exactly what they were fighting for. Grant her request. Captain Vasquez gets whatever she needs. What else? Dr. Morrison's Biological Warfare Division has identified several promising avenues of attack. The Dominion species have no immunity to Earth diseases, and their medical technology is surprisingly primitive. They've never had to deal with biological weapons. And our manufacturing capacity? Colonel Mitchell smiled grimly. That's the best news, General. It turns out that our primitive automated industries can outproduce Dominion factories by a factor of 50 to 1. They rely on slave labor and ceremonial craftsmanship. We've been building war machines while they've been making art. Meanwhile, in a small apartment on Mars Colony, Elena Vasquez was packing her few personal belongings. Her new assignment would take her far from anything resembling normal life, but she welcomed the change. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maya, Chen's face, and heard her final words. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find David Chen, Maya's father. He looked older than he had a week ago, grief having carved new lines into his face. Captain Vasquez, he said quietly, I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. I haven't done anything yet, Elena replied. But you will. David's eyes showed a fierce determination despite his sorrow. I can't fight the way you can, but I want to help. I'm an engineer. I know Dominion technology. Use me. Elena studied the man whose daughter's death had changed everything. David, what I'm planning, it's not going to be clean or simple. It's going to be war, and war is ugly. They made it ugly when they killed my little girl for no reason, David replied. I've already lost everything that mattered to me. Now I want to make sure they lose everything that matters to them. Across the galaxy, Admiral Zexathara was enjoying the praise of his fellow officers. The human compliance had been noted throughout Dominion space as an example of effective leadership. He had been promoted and given command of an entire sector. Congratulations, Admiral, said Fleet Commander Kelnoth as they shared drinks in the officers' club. Your handling of the human situation has been exemplary. Perhaps now other primitive species will learn from their example. Zexathara accepted the praise with satisfaction. Humans are emotional creatures. Once they realized the consequences of defiance, they became quite reasonable. I expect no further trouble from their sector. What the Admiral did not know was that at that very moment, 3 human ships had appeared at the edge of Dominion space. They were unlike any vessels the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, fast, and equipped with technology that should not have existed. The OW. Ships transmitted no identification signals and responded to no hails. They simply observed, recorded, and disappeared before Dominion patrols could investigate. But they left behind something that would soon become a nightmare for the aliens. Proof that humanity was no longer the primitive species they had first encountered. Dr. Morrison's research was beginning to bear fruit in ways the Dominion could never have anticipated. Human understanding of quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology had advanced far beyond what their initial assessments had suggested. The humans had been deliberately downplaying their capabilities during first contact, wanting to understand their new neighbors before revealing their true potential. Computer, run Simulation 17, Dr. Morrison commanded. The holographic display showed a Dominion ship being systematically disabled by microscopic machines. The nanobots invisible to Dominion sensors could infiltrate any system and either destroy it or reprogram it to human specifications. Excellent, Dr. Morrison murmured. They'll never know what hit them. In another part of the facility, weapons, designers were creating tools of war that would seem like magic to species that had grown comfortable with old technology. Gravity manipulation, matter conversion, and directed energy weapons that made Dominion armaments look like primitive clubs. But perhaps the most important development was happening in the realm of human psychology. The death of Maya Chen had done something to the human species that the Dominion could not understand. It had unified them in a way that no government or ideology ever could. On Earth, massive crowds gathered in silent vigils for the murdered child. No speeches were made. No protests organized. But in the silence, a message was being sent that resonated through every human heart. This will not stand. General Kim received daily reports from across human space. Production facilities were exceeding all expectations. Volunteer recruitment was overwhelming their capacity to process applicants. Most surprisingly, human colonies that had been arguing with each other for years were now working together with unprecedented cooperation. It's remarkable, reported Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the mission psychologist. Maya's death has created a psychological unity we've never seen before. Humans across the galaxy are identifying with her as if she were their own child. That's because she was, General Kim replied simply. Every human child belongs to all of us. The Dominion has shown us that our children are in danger, and we're responding the way any parent would. Elena Vasquez completed her briefings and prepared to depart for her first mission. She had been given command of a ship called the Retribution, crewed entirely by volunteers who had requested assignment to her unit. Many of them were parents themselves. Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Torres as they reviewed their orders. What's our primary objective? Elena looked at the tactical display showing Dominion positions throughout the sector. Our objective is simple, Commander. We're going to find every person responsible for Maya Chen's death, and we're going to make them understand the consequences of their actions. And after that, we're going to make sure no one ever thinks about hurting a human child again. The Retribution departed from its hidden base 3 days later, the first of many ships that would carry humanity's message to the galaxy. They were not seeking conquest or territory. They were seeking something far more dangerous to the established order: justice for a murdered child. As Elena's ship jumped to hyperspace, its destination was carefully chosen. They would not attack military targets or challenge Dominion fleets directly. Instead, they would go after the people who had made the decision to kill Maya Chen, starting with the supply chain that had supported Admiral Zexathara's mission. The war for Maya's memory had begun, but the galaxy would not recognize it as war for months to come. It would appear to be a series of unfortunate accidents, mysterious disappearances, and technical failures that somehow always affected those connected to the New Terra incident. By the time the Dominion understood what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. Humanity had awakened to its true potential, and the universe was about to learn why peaceful people, when finally pushed to war, could be more terrifying than any warrior race. Maya Chen's death had been intended as a lesson in submission. Instead, it had become the opening shot in a conflict that would reshape the galaxy forever. 6 months after Maya Chen's death, the first signs of humanity's response began to appear across Dominion space. They started small, almost unnoticeable events that the vast galactic bureaucracy initially dismissed as routine accidents or minor, technical failures. Commander Yexkol was the first to disappear. He had been the communications officer aboard Admiral Zexathara's flagship during the New Terra incident, responsible for recording and transmitting the execution footage throughout Dominion space. His transport ship was found drifting near the Telemar system, completely intact but empty of crew. "Strange," muttered Dominion investigator Kilnex as he examined the ship's logs. No signs of struggle, no hull breaches, no evidence of piracy. The crew simply vanished. What the investigator could not detect were the microscopic nanobots that had infiltrated the ship's air system 3 days earlier. Dr. Morrison's Biological Warfare Division had developed them specifically for silent extraction operations. The SAO crew had been rendered unconscious and transported to a hidden facility where Captain Elena Vasquez waited with her questions. "Commander Yexakol," Elena said as the alien regained consciousness in a sterile white room. "Thank you for joining us." The Dominion officer looked around in confusion, his yellow eyes trying to focus on his surroundings. "Where am I? What is the meaning of this?" "You're in a place where we can have an honest conversation about your role in the murder of Maya Chen," Elena replied calmly. "A human child who died because your admiral wanted to send a message about obedience." "I don't know what you're talking about," Yexkol protested. "I was following orders. The execution was justified under Dominion law." Elena activated a holographic display showing the footage of Maya's death, focusing on the moment when the frightened child called for her father. "This is what you recorded and broadcast, Commander. An 8-year-old girl being murdered for political theater." The alien watched the recording with growing unease. "The Admiral's decisions are not mine to question. I merely documented the enforcement action." "And now you're going to help us document something else," Elena said, her voice remaining calm despite the anger burning in her eyes. "You're going to tell us everything about Zexathara's command structure, his supporters, his supply lines, and his personal habits." "I will reveal nothing to primitive terrorists," Yexkol replied defiantly. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Commander, I think you misunderstand your situation. We're not terrorists. We're parents, and you helped kill one of our children. We have all the time in the galaxy to get the information we need." Over the following weeks, Commander Yexkol provided detailed intelligence about Dominion military operations. He did so not because of torture or threats, but because Elena's team had something far more effective. They made him watch recordings of human children playing, laughing, and learning. They showed him Maya's entire life, from her first steps to her final moments. "She had dreams," Elena told him during one session. She wanted to be an engineer like her father. She loved animals and always shared her food with the colony's pets. She was learning to read alien languages because she thought it would help humans and aliens understand each other better. By the end of his captivity, Yexkol was broken not by pain, but by the weight of understanding what had been destroyed. When they released him on a remote world with enough supplies to survive, he carried with him something that would haunt the Dominion, the knowledge that humans remembered everything and would never forget. The second target was Supply Depot Gamma 7, which had provided the weapons and equipment for Admiral Zexathara's fleet. The facility's automated systems began experiencing mysterious malfunctions that defied all attempts at repair. Shipments were delivered to wrong destinations, weapon systems shut down randomly, and worst of all, the depot's main computer began displaying images of Maya Chen on every screen. Chief Engineer Veltara stared at the displays in frustration. "I don't understand it. Our security systems show no signs of intrusion, but the computers are completely compromised." What she could not see were the quantum infiltration protocols developed by human AI specialists. The systems were not being hacked in any conventional sense. They were being rewritten at the quantum level by machines that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Sir," reported one of her technicians, "the anomalies are spreading to other facilities in the network. 17 depots are now reporting similar problems." The truth was that humanity had been studying Dominion technology since first contact, and they had discovered something remarkable. The alien systems were incredibly sophisticated but also incredibly predictable. 1,000 years of peace had made them complacent about security. Meanwhile, Elena Vasquez and her team, now calling themselves Maya's Wolves, moved through Dominion space like ghosts. Their ship, the Retribution, was equipped with cloaking, technology that bent light and sensor waves around it, making it effectively invisible to alien detection systems. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres as they approached their next objective. "Transport vessel carrying sector, Administrator Belkoth." Belkoth had been responsible for approving the compliance enforcement mission to New Terra. His signature was on the orders that had led to Maya's death, though he had probably never bothered to read the details of what he was authorizing. "Begin approach," Elena commanded. "Remember, we want him alive and conscious. He has information we need, and he's going to answer for what he authorized." The transport ship never knew what hit it. One moment it was traveling through hyperspace, and the next it was caught in a gravity well that pulled it back into normal space. Dominion sensors detected no attacking ships, no weapons fire, no evidence of hostile action. The transport simply stopped, its engines failing in ways that seemed impossible. Administrator Belkoth found himself face to face with Elena Vasquez in his own cabin, having no memory of how she had gotten there. His security guards were unconscious. His ship was dead in space, and this human female was sitting calmly in his chair as if she owned the place. "Administrator," Elena said politely, "we need to discuss your paperwork." Over the next several hours, Belkoth learned more about human determination than any Dominion citizen had ever experienced. Elena did not threaten him or cause him physical harm. Instead, she educated him about the consequences of his decisions. "This is Maya Chen," she said, showing him holographic recordings of the child's life. "She was 8 years old when your authorization killed her. She loved to sing, and she was teaching herself to play a musical instrument called a piano. I signed thousands of authorizations." Belkoth protested weakly. "I cannot be expected to review every minor enforcement action. Minor." Elena's voice remained calm, but something in her eyes made the alien administrator shrink back in his chair. "The murder of a child is minor to you?" "It was a necessary demonstration of Dominion authority," he replied. Though his voice lacked conviction, Elena activated another recording, this one showing Maya's father collapsing in grief beside his daughter's body. "Watch this, Administrator. Watch a father realize his child is dead because you couldn't be bothered to read what you were signing." By the time Elena was finished with him, Administrator Belkoth had provided complete details about Dominion administrative procedures, security protocols, and chain of command structures. More importantly, He had been forced to confront the reality of what his bureaucratic indifference had caused. When they released him, Belkoth was a changed being. He immediately submitted his resignation and retired to a monastery world, unable to function in a system he now understood was built on casual cruelty. But Maya's wolves were just the beginning. Across human space, other teams were forming with similar objectives. Dr. Morrison's biological warfare specialist created viruses that targeted only Dominion species, not to kill them, but to make them experience the same helplessness Maya had felt in her final moments. The diseases caused temporary paralysis and overwhelming fear, symptoms that lasted exactly as long as Maya's execution had taken. Human manufacturing facilities, now operating at full capacity, began producing weapons and equipment that seemed to violate known laws of physics. Matter converters that could turn asteroids into warships, gravity manipulators that could crush entire fleets, and most terrifying of all, weapons that attacked the mind rather than the body. General Sarah Kim received daily reports from across the growing conflict zone. "Status report," she commanded as she entered the situation room. "Excellent progress across all fronts," reported Colonel Mitchell. 17 key Dominion facilities have been neutralized without a single shot fired. Their supply chains are in chaos, their communication networks are compromised, and their leadership is beginning to experience what our analysts are calling psychological warfare fatigue. Casualties? None on our side. Minimal on theirs, mostly wounded pride and damaged equipment. Captain Vasquez's protocols are working perfectly. We're destroying their ability to function without giving them anything concrete to retaliate against. General, Kim nodded approvingly. And their response? Confusion, mostly. They're trying to classify these incidents as technical failures or isolated criminal activity. They don't understand that they're fighting a war. What the Dominion truly could not comprehend was the nature of human warfare. They were used to conflicts that followed established patterns. Fleets met in space, armies clashed on planets, treaties were signed by the survivors. Human warfare was something entirely different. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the mission psychologist, had been studying Dominion psychology and had made a crucial discovery. General, their species have never developed the capacity for what we call asymmetric thinking. They literally cannot conceive of an enemy that doesn't follow their rules of engagement. Explain, General Kim requested. For 1,000 years, they've been the dominant force in the galaxy. Every conflict has been resolved through overwhelming display of power. They show up with a big fleet, the enemy surrenders, and peace is restored. They have no concept of an opponent who refuses to play by those rules. Meanwhile, Admiral Zexathara was beginning to experience the first hints that something was wrong. His staff was reporting unusual incidents throughout his sector, but nothing that seemed immediately threatening. Admiral, reported his new communications. Officer, we've lost contact with Supply Depot Gamma 7 and 3 administrative centers in the past week. Technical problems, Zexathara dismissed. Primitive species often cause disruptions when they're learning to integrate with Dominion systems. Perhaps, sir, but the disruptions seem to be spreading. Intelligence suggests possible coordinated action. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting the humans are somehow responsible? They lack the capability for such operations. What Zexathara did not know was that at that very moment, Elena Vasquez was reviewing intelligence gathered from their recent operations. The picture it painted was deeply satisfying. The Dominion was beginning to fracture under pressure they could not understand or counter. Torres, she called to her second in command. What's our next target? Admiral Zexathara's personal supply. Ship is scheduled to dock at Station Keylor in 3 days. Perfect opportunity to send him a more direct message. Elena smiled, and for the first time in months there was genuine pleasure in the expression. Excellent. It's time the Admiral learned that actions have consequences. The hunt was accelerating, and the Dominion was beginning to understand that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Humanity was not seeking conquest or territory. They were seeking justice for a murdered child, and they would not stop until every person responsible had paid the price. Maya Chen's death had been intended to teach humanity about submission, Instead, it was teaching the galaxy about the terrible patience of human vengeance. Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with growing unease. In the past month, his entire sector had been plagued by what could only be described as systematic failures. Supply lines disrupted, communication networks compromised, and key personnel simply vanishing without explanation. "Admiral," his aide approached nervously, "we've received another report. Your personal courier ship never arrived at Station Keylor. It was found drifting, empty near the asteroid field." The Admiral's jaw tightened. This was the 15th ship in his command to suffer mysterious crew disappearances. Each incident left behind only empty vessels and cargo holds filled with images of a human child. The same child he had executed on New Terra months ago. "Sir," continued the aide, "High Command is requesting a full explanation of the incidents in your sector. They're beginning to suspect coordinated action." Zexathara turned away from the display, his yellow eyes reflecting, a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. Impossible. The humans lack the technology for such operations. These incidents must be the work of another species. But even as he spoke the words, the Admiral knew they rang false. Every attack, every disruption, every missing crew member was connected to someone who had been present during the New Terra operation. Someone was hunting his people with surgical precision, and they were doing it without leaving any evidence behind. What Zexathara could not know was that at that very moment, Elena Vasquez and her team were observing his flagship from less than a kilometer away. The Retribution hung invisible in space, its advanced cloaking systems making it undetectable to Dominion sensors. "Target confirmed," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. "Admiral Zexathara is aboard the command vessel along with his senior staff." Elena studied the tactical readout with satisfaction. After months of careful preparation, they had finally cornered the being responsible for Maya's death. But this would not be another quick extraction. This time, they were going to send a message that the entire galaxy would understand. "Begin." "Phase 1, she commanded. "I want every system on that ship compromised, but keep them functional. The Admiral is going to watch his empire crumble before we take him." Dr. Morrison's quantum infiltration systems went to work with devastating efficiency. Within minutes, every computer aboard Zexathara's flagship was under human control, though the aliens noticed nothing unusual. Screens continued to display normal information, but now everything was being filtered through human intelligence networks. Earth, General Sarah Kim watched the operation unfold from her command center. The war had escalated far beyond anything the Dominion could comprehend, and humanity was winning without firing a single conventional shot. "Status report across all fronts," she commanded. Colonel Mitchell stepped forward with his daily briefing. "General, our psychological warfare operations have exceeded all projections. Dominion morale is collapsing in 17 sectors. Their communication networks are compromised to the point where they're afraid to send sensitive information through their own systems. Casualties? Still minimal on both sides. The Dominion has lost approximately 50,000 personnel to extraction operations, but all are alive and being held in our facilities. Our own losses remain 0. General Kim nodded grimly. "And their response?" "That's where things get interesting. High Chancellor Vorthak has called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Intelligence suggests they're planning a direct military response." This was what humanity had been waiting for. The Dominion was finally beginning to understand that they were under attack, but their response would follow the same predictable patterns they had used for 1,000 years. They would gather their fleets and attempt to crush the threat with overwhelming force. "Activate Phase 2 protocols," General Kim ordered. "All ships to defensive positions around Earth. It's time to show them what they're really fighting." Meanwhile, aboard his flagship, Admiral Zexathara was receiving the news he had been dreading. High Command had finally connected the incidents in his sector to the New Terra operation, and they were not pleased with his explanations. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "you're being recalled to Centralis Prime for immediate debriefing. Fleet Commander Kelnoth will be arriving with reinforcements to handle the situation in your sector." Zexathara felt his career crumbling around him. The human problem was destroying everything he had built, and he still had no idea how they were doing it. Very well. Prepare for departure to the capital. What he did not realize was that Elena Vasquez had been listening to every communication, reading every order and watching every decision he made. The humans had turned his own ship into a window through which they could observe Dominion military operations in real time. Torres, Elena called to her second-in-command. Begin Phase 2. I want a full tactical analysis of their fleet movements. Transmitted to General Kim. Already in progress, Captain. We're tracking 17 Dominion fleets converging on Earth. Estimated arrival in 48 hours. Elena smiled coldly. Excellent. They're finally taking the bait. The Dominion's response was everything humanity had hoped for. High Chancellor Vorthak had decided that the mysterious incidents affecting Admiral Zexathara's sector were evidence of a coordinated human rebellion that needed to be crushed immediately and decisively. Gather every available fleet, he commanded the Galactic Council. The humans must be reminded of their place in the galactic order. We will destroy their homeworld as an example to other primitive species. The assembled council members murmured their approval. This was familiar territory, the kind of problem that had always been solved through overwhelming displays of force. None of them questioned whether humanity might have prepared for exactly this response. Fleet Commander Kelnoth was given overall command of the operation. His armada consisted of over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of dozens of alien species. It was the largest fleet assembled in 500 years, and it was aimed directly at humanity's heart. This will be simple, Kelnoth told his staff as they prepared for departure. The humans have shown some cleverness with sabotage and terrorism, but they cannot stand against the full might of the Dominion. We will destroy their fleet, occupy their worlds, and execute their leadership as an example. Dr. Morrison watched the approaching armada from his monitoring station and couldn't help but smile. Computer, activate all defensive systems. It's time to give our guests a proper welcome. Across human space, hidden installations that had been built in secret over the past year began powering up. The moon itself revealed its true nature as massive weapon arrays emerged from beneath the surface. Asteroid fields that had seemed empty suddenly bristled with defensive platforms. And throughout the solar system, devices that violated every known law of physics prepared to demonstrate humanity's true technological capabilities. General, reported Dr. Morrison over the communication link, all systems are operational. The Dominion fleet will reach the outer system perimeter in 6 hours. Understood, General Kim replied. Captain Vasquez, what's the status of your operation? Elena's voice came through clearly from the Retribution. Admiral Zexathara is aboard his flagship approaching Earth with the main fleet. We're maintaining surveillance and ready to begin extraction when you give the order. Negative, Captain. I want him to see what happens when someone threatens human children. Let him watch his entire fleet get destroyed, then bring him to me. As the massive Dominion armada approached Earth, they found something that defied all their expectations. The human homeworld appeared to be completely undefended. No orbital platforms, no fleet formations, no sign of military preparation. Earth hung in space like a blue and green jewel, seemingly helpless before their overwhelming force. This is too easy, muttered Fleet Commander Kelnoth as he studied the tactical displays. Where are their defenses? Perhaps they realize the futility of resistance, suggested his aide. Many primitive species surrender when faced with superior force. But Admiral Zexathara, monitoring the approach from his position in the fleet, felt a growing sense of unease. The humans had demonstrated remarkable capabilities over the past months. It seemed unlikely that they would leave their homeworld, completely vulnerable. Something is wrong, he told his communications officer. The humans are planning something. As if in response to his words, space around Earth suddenly came alive. What had appeared to be empty vacuum was revealed to be filled with cloaked installations, hidden weapon platforms, and defensive systems that had been invisible to Dominion sensors. The moon opened like a flower, revealing a massive construction that spanned its entire surface. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the Dominion had ever encountered as humanity's most carefully guarded secret, prepared to demonstrate its power. "By the void," whispered Fleet Commander Kelnoth as his sensors finally detected the true scope of human preparations. "How is this possible?" The answer came in the form of a transmission broadcast across all frequencies, delivered in Admiral Zexathara's own voice, though he had never spoken the words. "Attention, Dominion Fleet. You have come to Earth seeking to punish humanity for defending ourselves against the murder of our children. We welcome you to our home system. Population, 12 billion very angry humans." The transmission continued with footage of Maya Chen's execution, played in slow motion so that every detail was clearly visible. Her final words, "I want to go home," echoed across the Dominion fleet in dozens of alien languages. "You killed this child to send us a message about submission," the broadcast continued. "We received your message. Here is our reply." What followed was a demonstration of power that redefined the Dominion's understanding of what was possible. Weapons that manipulated gravity itself reached out across millions of kilometers to crush ships like insects. Energy beams that bent space and time reduced entire formations to atomic particles. And worst of all, weapons that attacked the mind itself, filling enemy crew members with the same terror Maya had experienced in her final moments. Admiral Zexathara watched his civilization's greatest fleet dissolve around him like smoke in a hurricane. Ships that had been the pride of their respective species simply ceased to exist, their crews vanishing into quantum foam or collapsing into impossibly small points of matter. "Retreat!" screamed Fleet Commander Kelnoth over the communication channels. "All ships retreat immediately." But there was nowhere to run. Human weapons reached across the solar system with casual ease, plucking fleeing ships from hyperspace and reducing them to scrap metal. In less than an hour, the greatest military force in galactic history had been completely annihilated. Through it all, Admiral Zexathara's flagship remained untouched, protected by the same humans who were destroying everything around him. He was being kept alive to witness the consequences of his actions, to understand the full scope of what he had unleashed when he decided to murder a child for political theater. As the last Dominion ships disappeared in bursts of exotic energy, Elena Vasquez finally made her move. The retribution materialized beside Zexathara's flagship, no longer bothering with stealth protocols. "Admiral," she transmitted directly to his command bridge, "this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Retribution. You killed Maya Chen. Now you're coming with me to answer for that crime." Zexathara looked around at what remained of his fleet, nothing but debris and radiation, and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had not just killed a child. He had awakened a species that could reshape reality itself, when properly motivated. "Surrender your vessel," Elena continued, "or watch it join the rest of your fleet in oblivion." The Admiral looked at his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions of terror and accusation. They had followed him into this disaster, and now they were going to pay the price for his arrogance. "We surrender," he said quietly. As Elena's team boarded his ship, Admiral Zexathara realized that the war was far from over. This had been just the opening engagement. Humanity had revealed only a fraction of their true capabilities, and they had done so for one simple reason: to send a message to the galaxy about what happened when someone hurt their children. Maya Chen's death had cost the Dominion their greatest fleet and their illusion of invincibility. But Elena Vasquez was not finished with them yet. The real reckoning was still to come. The trial of Admiral Zexathara took place on Earth, broadcast live to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The courtroom was simple and austere, designed not for spectacle but for justice. Elena Vasquez sat in the front row, her eyes never leaving the alien who had destroyed so much with a single thoughtless act. The Admiral looked older than he had 9 months ago when he killed Maya Chen. His gray skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and his yellow eyes showed the haunted expression of someone who had seen his entire worldview collapse. He was no longer the confident enforcer of galactic order, but a broken being who finally understood the true cost of his actions. Judge Maria Santos, a former military officer turned civilian magistrate, called the court to order. "Admiral Zexathara, You stand accused of the murder of Maya Chen, an innocent child, for the purpose of political intimidation. How do you plead?" The Admiral's translator rendered his words in mechanical tones that somehow made them more damning. "Guilty. I plead guilty to all charges." There was no drama in the admission, no last-minute defenses or attempts to justify his actions. The months since Maya's death had stripped away all his rationalizations, leaving only the bare truth of what he had done. "The court will hear victim impact statements," Judge Santos announced. David Chen stepped forward, and the galaxy watched a father speak about his murdered daughter. He talked about her dreams, her kindness, her curiosity about the universe that had ultimately killed her. He spoke simply and quietly, but his words carried across space with the force of absolute truth. "Maya believed the universe was good," he said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "She thought aliens and humans could be friends. She was learning their languages because she wanted to help everyone understand each other, and they killed her for that hope." When David finished, Elena Vasquez took the stand, but she did not speak about vengeance or justice. Instead, she talked about consequences. "Your Honor, the defendant's actions have changed humanity forever. We have learned that the universe contains beings who will murder children for political convenience. We have learned that peaceful coexistence requires the ability to defend ourselves against those who mistake kindness for weakness." She turned to look directly at Admiral Zexathara. "The defendant taught us that we cannot rely on the goodwill of others to protect our children. For that lesson, he will answer not just to this court, but to history itself." The sentence was life imprisonment, to be served in a facility where the Admiral would spend his remaining years watching recordings of human children at play, learning about the lives that were similar to the one he had destroyed. It was not intended as torture but as education, a final chance for him to understand what he had taken from the universe. But the trial was not the end of humanity's response. It was barely the beginning. High Chancellor Vorthak sat in the ruins of the Galactic Council chamber on Centralis Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. In the week since the destruction of the Dominion fleet at Earth, human ships had appeared throughout the galaxy. They did not attack or conquer, but they made their presence known in ways that could not be ignored. "Chancellor," his aide reported, nervously, "we have confirmed human vessels in 37 systems. They're not responding to our communications, but they're also not showing any hostile intent." "What are they doing?" Vorthak asked wearily. "They appear to be observing, monitoring our activities. Sometimes they respond to distress calls and provide aid, but they refuse all attempts at diplomatic contact." The truth was more complex than the Dominion could understand. Humanity had positioned itself as the galaxy's new watchdog, ready to intervene whenever someone threatened the innocent. They were not seeking to rule, but to prevent others from ruling through terror and violence. General Sarah Kim reviewed the deployment reports from her office on Earth. Operation Guardian was proceeding exactly as planned. Human forces were now positioned to monitor every major power in the galaxy, ready to respond instantly to any threat against civilian populations. "Status report," she commanded as Colonel Mitchell entered with his daily briefing. "All monitoring stations are operational, General. We're tracking communications from 43 different species, with full surveillance coverage of former Dominion territories. Dr. Morrison's intelligence networks are providing real-time assessment of potential threats. Any immediate concerns?" "The Veltar Empire has been mobilizing forces near the Rigel sector. Intelligence suggests they may be planning to expand into former Dominion space. However, our presence in the area appears to be deterring any aggressive action." General Kim nodded approvingly. "Good. What about reconstruction efforts?" "Proceeding ahead of schedule. We've provided aid to 17 worlds that were previously under Dominion control. Food, medical supplies, and technical assistance. In each case, we've made it clear that the aid comes with no strings attached. We're not seeking to replace the Dominion as their rulers." This was perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of humanity's new role in the galaxy. They offered help, without demanding submission, protection without requiring tribute. It was a concept so foreign to galactic politics that many species initially refused to believe it was genuine. Elena Vasquez now commanded a fleet of ships that bore a simple designation, Maya's Guard. Their mission was straightforward: respond to any threat against innocent life, anywhere in the galaxy, with whatever force was necessary to stop it. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres as they approached the Kethlar system. "We're receiving a distress signal from the fourth planet. Appears to be a civil conflict with civilian casualties." Elena studied the tactical display showing the planet below. Two factions were fighting for control of the world's government, and neither side was showing much concern for the safety of non-combatants caught in the crossfire. "Standard intervention protocol," she ordered. "Disable all military assets, establish safe zones for civilians, and broadcast the Maya Doctrine to all participants." The Maya Doctrine had become humanity's statement of principles to the galaxy. It was simple and direct. Any group that deliberately targeted innocents, especially children, would face immediate intervention by human forces. No negotiations, no warnings, no diplomatic immunity. The warring factions on Kethlar learned this lesson within minutes of Elena's arrival. Their weapon systems simply stopped working. Their communications were taken over by human broadcasts, and their military leaders found themselves transported to neutral locations where they could be lectured about the consequences of involving civilians in their conflicts. "Attention all combatants," Elena's voice echoed across the planet's surface. "This is Captain Vasquez of Maya's Guard. You have 30 minutes to establish a ceasefire and begin negotiations for the protection of civilian populations. Failure to comply will result in the removal of your military capabilities and leadership." The response was swift and complete. Within the hour, both sides had agreed to peace talks mediated by neutral parties, with human observers ensuring that no civilians were harmed during the process. Dr. James Morrison watched the intervention from his laboratory, satisfied that another potential tragedy had been prevented. His research had expanded beyond weapons development to include reconstruction and healing technologies. Humanity was learning to repair the damage caused by galactic politics, one world at a time. "Computer, display the current threat assessment matrix," he commanded. The holographic display showed the galaxy as it now existed, a complex web of relationships monitored and protected by human intelligence networks. Red zones indicated areas of potential conflict, yellow zones showed regions requiring observation, and green zones represented stable areas where life could flourish without fear. "Remarkable," Dr. Morrison murmured. "In less than a year, we've gone from unknown newcomers to the galaxy's primary peacekeeping force." But the true measure of humanity's success was not in their military victories or technological superiority. It was in the slow change taking place in galactic culture itself. Species that had ruled through fear for millennia were beginning to understand that there was another way. Ambassador Clixtal of the former mining guild approached the human embassy on Centralis Prime with considerable nervousness. His species had been among the Dominion's most enthusiastic supporters, and they were still adjusting to the new reality. "Ambassador Chen," he said formally to the human representative, "my government wishes to discuss the establishment of formal diplomatic relations." Ambassador Sarah Chen, David Chen's sister and Maya's aunt, received him with polite formality. She had volunteered for the diplomatic corps as her way of honoring her niece's memory. "Ambassador Clixtal, we appreciate your government's interest. However, as you know, humanity does not seek traditional alliances or trade agreements. We have only one requirement for peaceful relations: the protection of innocence." Clixtal replied quickly. "Yes, we understand the Maya Doctrine. My government has implemented new policies to ensure compliance with human expectations." "We're pleased to hear that," Sarah replied. "But you should understand that our monitoring will continue regardless of any formal agreements. The safety of children and non-combatants is not negotiable." This conversation was being repeated across the galaxy as species after species came to understand the new reality. Humanity would not conquer them or rule them, but they would no longer tolerate the casual cruelty that had characterized galactic politics for centuries. On New Terra, a small memorial garden had grown around Maya Chen's grave. Visitors came from across human space and beyond, leaving flowers and toys and messages of remembrance. The colony had become a pilgrimage site, a place where people came to remember what had been lost and what had been gained. Elena Vasquez visited the memorial whenever her duties brought her back to human space. She stood before the small gravestone and spoke softly to the child whose death had changed everything. Maya, we kept our promise. No one will ever forget what happened to you, and no one will ever hurt another child the way they hurt you. The galaxy is different now because of you. The inscription on the gravestone had been expanded since the war. It now read, Maya Chen, beloved daughter, she believed the universe was good. Because of her, it became better. Admiral Zexathara, in his prison cell, watched recordings of human children playing in the memorial garden. His guards had told him that these children came from dozens of different worlds, representing species that had once been enemies. They played together without fear, protected by the promise that humanity had made in Maya's name. For the first time since his capture, the Admiral spoke without being questioned. I understand now, he said quietly. I understand what I destroyed, and what you built from its ashes. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in human nature, that peaceful people, when finally driven to war, fight not for conquest, but for the simple right to live without fear. Maya Chen's death had cost the universe one bright young life, but it had purchased something invaluable in return, the knowledge that innocence would always have protectors. Humanity had not sought to rule the galaxy. They had chosen something far more difficult and far more important. They had chosen to be its conscience, its guardians, and its hope for a better future. The war for Maya's memory was over. The peace built in her honor had begun. And somewhere in the quantum networks that connected human space, in the algorithms that monitored galactic communications, in the hearts and minds of 12 billion humans, Maya Chen's laughter echoed on, a reminder that even in the darkest universe, some lights can never be extinguished. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was no longer a place where children died for the convenience of tyrants. In that simple fact lay humanity's greatest victory and Maya's most lasting memorial.